All right, we'll call to order the July 27th Spokane City Council meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us. Before we get started, we changed up our agenda a bit. So we took up several matters that did not seem like they would garner public attention at our 3:30 meeting, so that we could put aside some significant time to hear from various subject matter experts in the community about how best to spend money responding to the COVID crisis. So we're going to finish up with that. Before we get to that, we'll have a proclamation, we'll have a brief remembrance, and a discussion and vote on the Water Conservation Master Plan. So we'll get started, and I think Councilmember Burke, if you were there, you have the privilege of reading a proclamation recognizing the Americans with Disability Act.
I am. Did you want to take roll call, though?
I did, actually. I was just waiting for you to ask me that. Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Pfister.
Council President Biggs.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Present.
Councilmember Kinnear.
Present.
Councilmember Mumm.
Here.
Councilmember Stratton.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all council members are present.
All right, Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. So I'm going to read this proclamation, and I know we have Mel's on the line, and they're going to give a few words after the proclamation. So thanks for joining us, Mel's. Whereas some 57 million Americans have disabilities, which have caused many to undergo the indignities of discrimination, and some of 908,818 Washingtonians have disabilities, which have also caused many to undergo indignities of discrimination. And on July 26, 1990, President George H. Bush signed into law the Washingtons with Disability Act, ADA, to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities, and whereas it is the purpose of this act to provide a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities in the areas of education, employment, government services, places of public accommodations, commercial facilities, and other vital areas to society. And it is also the purpose of this act to provide clear, strong, consistent, enforceable standards addressing discrimination against the individuals with disabilities. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers, changing perceptions, and promoting full participation in community life. And despite progress over the last 30 years, people with disabilities still have higher poverty rates and lower employment and educational outcomes than those without disabilities. And whereas the city of Spokane is committed to providing the most integrated, less restrictive environments for people with disabilities and their families to live in freedom and enjoy the promise of education, employment, effective communication, participation in their community culture, way of life, and to have an appropriate and be appropriate to recognize this date and to heighten public awareness of the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act. Now, therefore, I, Nadine Woodward, Mayor of the City of Spokane, on behalf of the citizens of Spokane, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2020 as American Disability Act Awareness Day. So we have with us Mel's, and so Mel's, if you want to explain a little bit about who you are and say a few words for us.
Hi, thank you so much, Councilperson Burke, and everybody here for giving me this time. My name is Mel Felton. I use they, them pronouns, and I work for the Disability Action Center as well as volunteering for Access for All Spokane. Today, we are commemorating the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I am 24 years old and am part of what is called the ADA generation. Not for one moment of my life have I lived in a country without the ambitious promise pushed by disability advocates before me. The ADA has brought access to millions, and the blueprints for myself and my disabled siblings for an equal shot at the American dream. Yet, the ADA is an unfinished promise. 73% of those experiencing homelessness have a psychiatric or mental health disability. 41% have a physical disability, and 37% have an intellectual or developmental disability. And then these are just more statistics adding on to what Councilperson Burke mentioned about education and poverty. But most heinously, nearly half of all COVID-related deaths in this country have been in congregate settings such as nursing homes, which are often seen as the first option and assumed to be the only options for individuals with disabilities like myself when housing comes to question. But those of us in the independent living movement know that that is not true. We know that community-based living and providing personal care attendance inside of the home not only provides a better physical and mental health for the person and the client, but is also cheaper. The ADA states that a disability can in no way diminish a person's right to fully participate in society. But as a disabled person, I have not seen this in major practice. I am honored to be given this opportunity to speak, as I am honored by Spokane having an ADA Awareness Day. With this awareness, our next steps, not just as a city, but as a community, must be those that include disability from the beginning and not just as an afterthought. As we face a housing crisis that has only been exacerbated by COVID, we must prioritize affordable, accessible, and community-based housing for all. I've fallen in love with this city greatly. Spokane is my chosen home, and I know together, in the inclusion of all, we can reach these goals and complete this 30-year unfinished promise. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mel, so much for your words.
Thank you, Mel.
Thank you so much, Mel, for your words tonight. And we know that we'll be hearing from you on other nights as well. And I'm glad that you chose Spokane. Thank you. I wanted to turn to a somber moment. We got the news today that a longtime firefighter for the city of Spokane, Ed Foster, passed away just recently as a result of health conditions he suffered in the line of duty serving our city. And I'm just hoping that we'll just take a few moments of quiet to honor all that he has given and be thinking of his family and friends and all who knew him. So just join me for a few moments of silence, and I'll call us back in a moment. Thank you for that brief token of appreciation for Ed and his service and all who love him. Thanks. Moving on to our agenda, we have one resolution, I believe. Ms. Pfister.
Resolution 2020-51, adopting the 2020 Water Conservation Master Plan.
So a couple years ago, the city of Spokane came together with lots of stakeholders and decided that when we updated our laws around selling water to outlying areas, we would ensure that they practice conservation as a condition of selling water out of our aquifer into other watersheds, and also that we as a city would start leading by example. And one of those benchmarks was to create a water conservation plan, and we gave the water department a year and a half or so to do that. And they came up with a plan, and they shared it with council, and we gave feedback, and we went to the community. And tonight, a revised version of that plan is coming forward. Some great work by the department on setting up ways that individual ratepayers can save water, rebate programs, putting in devices that will save water. But we also recognize that if we're going to really reach the water conservation goals that we have been aspiring to, which will allow us to continue to grow our economy and invite more people into our amazing place without exhausting our water resources in a time of changing water precipitation patterns. We're going to have to do more. So we reached a compromise of sorts to adopt this plan. At the same time, immediately start revisions on 2.0 to address drought conditions and more ambitious goals, especially for outdoor watering. So that's before us tonight. Again, super great plan developed by the administration and a lot of work from Kara Odegaard and the Sustainability Action Subcommittee to get to where we are. But are there any... We don't have any public comment signed up. I thought we might, which is why we kept it at 6, but we don't have any. Is there any council commentary or questions before we vote? All right.
I've got a little...
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not.
Yep.
I want to just echo what I had kind of talked about before we turned down my volume so it's not too echoey. I wanted to just echo some of the comments that I had said before. I am really hesitant of passing a water plan when we haven't really done too much with our stakeholders in terms of how to address some of the issues that we could move forward on. I realize that we need to pass a water plan to move forward. I just have to note that I do believe that there's a lot more we can do in this plan, and I really hope we actually follow through with reaching out to our stakeholders and getting their input and making sure that we're doing all we can. It's a really relevant topic now, as we just got briefed on our agreement with Airway Heights and the water that we're able to give them. We should have protection for the water and how we use it. And also, if we are giving our water to other municipalities around here, we should definitely have protections on how they use it. And we don't have those set in place right now. And that's what makes me weary about passing this tonight, is that I don't think there's been a holistic conversation around it. So a little hesitant to pass it without that input and without strong provisions in there that's going to make sure that we save our amazing aquifer water for generations beyond us. But I will support this tonight because I realize we need to pass it. I just really hope that, the rest of council members and I hold people accountable to make sure that we actually get a fair and just water plan for our community. So thank you.
Any other council comment? Councilmember Kinnear.
Thank you. And, I share those sentiments that Councilmember Burke was talking about. I think this is a great first step, but we have so much more to do. And as a city, I think we need to set an example. And that's the one thing I haven't seen us do. We're making some strides around golf courses and some of our parks, but we have a long ways to go. And I want to see us as a council commit to going forward to really dig in on this and make sure that we can show that we are moving forward with saving water, not just for recreation and for fish, but for the health of the aquifer, as Councilmember Burke said, for generations to come. It's not our water. We're the stewards of the water, and so we need to take that responsibility really seriously. So I will be supporting this, but my commitment is going forward that there's more work to do.
Any other council comment? Yeah, I just, before we vote, I obviously support this, but I just want to note that the presentation we got from Airway Heights today included a whole plan on water reclamation, where they're taking water that's been treated at their wastewater and they're using it as irrigation. And that was a condition that we put on them as part of the water emergency water agreement that we gave them. And that came out of the law we passed several years ago that was part of a broad stakeholder process, including the Riverkeeper and the Sierra Club and all the people advocating for water. We now have, for the first time, a water conservation plan, assuming we pass it tonight. But it doesn't go nearly far enough, and everyone agrees. But right now, the water department is ready to spend money on saving water, starting literally tomorrow. We hear from them as long as we can pass this. So I invite you to vote for it. with that, we'll go to a roll call. Councilmember Mumm.
Frozen.
Okay. We'll do Councilmember Mumm is rejoining us. So Councilmember Stratton.
Aye.
Councilmember Kinnear.
Aye.
Council President is an aye. Councilmember Burke.
Aye.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I don't know if Councilmember Mumm has rejoined us or not. Okay.
I don't think that counts.
All right.
Can we hold the vote open?
Yeah, I think we'll hold the vote open until she gets back on, and we'll move on to the next topic, because I'm sure they care about water up on 5 Mile. So, all right. So we'll get Councilmember Mumm's vote, aye or nay, in a little bit. But now we want to move into a special section on figuring out the city's potential response to COVID. We've been allocated $6.6 million by the governor of the state of Washington that we can seek reimbursement from those funds for money we spend on COVID-related matters, as long as it wasn't in our budget. And it was after, I think, March 1st, Mr. Warfield, or is it March? It's after March 1st. Between March 1st and December 31st is the dates. March 12th. Anyway, we have to spend it actually before October 15th, I think, for accounting purposes. But we have been discussing it for a while, and the mayor's office and council have put together a plan to allocate city funds and then seek reimbursement from whatever sources we can. And we thought we would invite some people who are very involved in the community in the COVID response and these issues to give council just a little bit of insight into ways that they think we could best leverage the funds if we were spending them in certain areas. Council's already set out some areas of housing, childcare, nonprofits that are providing services in COVID, and small businesses and the arts. And so we've already set out some broad buckets, but we're really interested in hearing from subject matter experts on their ideas. If we have, only a couple months to spend the money with the least administrative cost, the most effectively to get the biggest bang for our buck in our community. So with that, I'm going to read off the list of people in the order that I have them, just so you'll kind of know where you are in the process. And then hopefully we'll use that order, but if somehow we get out of it, if someone drops off, we can get them back in. So we're going to start with Steve Corker, then Terry Anderson, then Lee Williams, then Luke Jasmine, then Mariah McKay, and possibly someone else with Mariah, Melissa Huggins, Julie Honenkamp, and Carol Weltz, Fawn Schott, and then Tim Henkel. So okay. Candace, would you like to cast your vote for the Water Conservation Master Plan?
Yes, of course. WebEx froze on me when I said aye, so okay. I'm an aye. Thanks for waiting.
All right, we'll take that. That's 7-0. Somebody tell Kristen from the Water Department she can send out the notices on the rebates that are available so we can start saving water tomorrow. But let's start. So we're looking at, I think, 3 to 5 minutes per person, ideally closer to the 3. So, tell us what's most important first. But we're going to start with Steve Corker. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts, Steve. Are you there? Okay. We see. Oh. You're on mute, Steve. I don't know if it's us muting you or you muting yourself. Okay.
Am I better?
You are better. Better than ever.
So I'm going to start all over again.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak. And while I'm representing the Landlord Association, as a former city council member, I really welcome this funding. It's just critical to help us deal with the families in needs with the COVID crisis. We've always struggled with about 60% of our families having to spend more on housing than they should. And I think what these funds do is provide us an ability to keep people in their homes. And that's something that all the agencies that have dealt with housing have been working on the last 3 or 4 months to get as many of those funds available to basically serve the people of Spokane in particular. And this particular program that you've designed, I just can't tell you how important it is. Some of the issues that I would like to raise in the housing portion of it is that it's really important that the program delegate funds to the people who cannot pay versus the people who choose not to pay. I'm concerned that the housing deficit right now, rental deficit in Spokane, in the city of Spokane, is probably somewhere between about 1.7 and 2.3 million dollars, and I am sure that this is going to go on for 3 to 6 months more. And so I think that the allocation of funds is just absolutely critical that it goes to the people in the greatest need and who cannot pay. I think a second thing in terms of dealing with the long-term consequences is to develop policies with the city that are consistent with our partners, whether it's the county, the city, and the valley. I don't want a program to prejudice or discourage future investment in low-income housing in the city of Spokane. In looking over the request for proposal, I noticed that there's a requirement, evidently, that those receiving funds, the beneficiaries, the tenants, as well as the landlords, have to be residents of the city of Spokane. And I'm afraid what that means is that if we have a building owned by a landlord who lives out of Spokane, that the tenants in that building are not eligible to receive this benefits. That is something I got from reading the documents that were sent to me earlier. There were some of the other smaller points that dealt with the payback and the program that basically said that for each month of delinquent rents that they would have a 2-month period to spread that over. You know, with the average rent, let's say somewhere between $800 and $1,000 in low-income housing, trying to spread that burden over a 2-month period for the majority of people that are struggling to pay their rent right now, I just don't think is realistic. Another issue with the program that I saw was whether or not the not pursuing eviction for 6 months following receipt of these funds would be in conflict with state moratorium or other moratoriums that may impact the citizens of Spokane. But I'm just excited about these funds. We kind of did some research in terms of what would happen if there was a huge impact that created evictions and transitioned people into the homeless. And we had a feeling that for every dollar that you invest in keeping people in their homes saves really $2 or $3 if those people had to transition into the homeless environment. And if that went over for an extended period of time, those costs would be accelerated. So I think what I'm suggesting, it's a real good investment to try to keep people in their existing homes and to prevent any type of impactful financial eviction status that would occur when the COVID crisis is over. So again, I thank you for the opportunity, and any questions you might have, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Steve, for the concise talk. Any questions for Steve? Okay. Again, thank you for your prior service on council and all that you've done for this conversation and for working closely with Terry Anderson, who's our next speaker. Terry.
Hey,
You're breaking up just a little bit, Terry.
I think I have 4.
Let's see. Try it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Terry Anderson, and I can hear myself speaking. I'm the director of the Spokane Office for the Tenants Union in Washington State, and I'm here to ask that you use some of the CARES that you have received
Terry,
for
Terry, just a sec. Can you maybe turn off your volume on your computer, if you're on a computer?
Turn my volume off.
Are you on? Because we're getting kind of an echo from you.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not. I'm sorry. Keep going. Are you on a phone or a computer?
I'm on a tablet.
Can you hang up and come back in, and we'll come back to you, because it's just not quite. Let's give it another shot. Okay. All right. Then let's move to Lee Williams to talk about childcare.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I also have some content to share. I'm going to attempt to pull that up. That is not working. Hannah Lee, I think, has my PowerPoint. She's getting that. Yeah. I will just say thank you to the council for opening this up to a discussion about childcare. I very much appreciate that. Luke Jasmine, who's the center director and owner for Parkview Childcare, will be doing this in tandem with each other. We are here to talk about the needs of childcare and how a needed funding for business will help us to support it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have this just brief PowerPoint to share with you to kind of point out what some of the issues are and what some of the solutions could be. So we'll go to the first slide. Okay, access is really the big issue. Access to childcare for working families does require that we have financially sustainable childcare to fit family needs. And needs have changed with COVID-19, as we all know. We thought for a short time it was only going to be a few weeks. Now it's been 4 months, and we are still in the recovery. So access to childcare is more difficult, as before there was a crisis, because we only had about enough childcare to serve about 42% of children birth to 5 years old, which was way under capacity. And now that we've had COVID, we have had childcares that have closed down. We're back to about 17% closed at this point, but at one point there were about half of childcares that were closed. So if you can move it ahead, please. So vacancies. There's less than 100 slots for infants in Spokane County right now, and only 19% of school-age childcare is open. And not all plans for school attendance have been settled, so there's still a lot of confusion and actually some planning going on out there about how we could possibly do that school-age childcare when we're not really sure when the children will be going to school for the most part and when they'll be out. Okay, you can move it ahead, please. So some solutions are to grant some funds to child care programs that will enable them to increase their capacity and develop new slots. The development of slots requires focus on location, ages, and families' ability to pay. So it would be a very focused look at where we really are underserved here in the Spokane community, and putting our focus on those areas and for those age children. Okay, you can move it ahead, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Luke.
All right. Thank you, Lee. And again, thank you all for just having this discussion with us and seeing the value that childcare has. In case you were wondering, we're still struggling. We're still struggling in childcare. To give some few examples, if you look at a classroom that typically has about 20 kids in it, right now, throughout, we're about 12 kids in a classroom, which is good for making sure that we're keeping class sizes low, but when you're looking at expenses, we still have the pre-COVID expenses, and now it's additional due to having to buy additional supplies and doing this extra sanitation practices. As many of you've heard, a lot of private pay families have not been using slots, and for many reasons. It's not just because they are nervous about bringing their children to facilities, but it's also because they just don't have the funds to be able to pay. A lot of them have lost their jobs, and a lot of them are trying to get back, but when they don't have a facility or the funds to be able to bring their kids to one of our facilities, that causes an additional problem for them. And right now, we're seeing a lot of incidences and behaviors. I mean, and behaviors are really high right now. I have teachers that are really at their brink right now, being pushed mentally because there's a lack of access to the services that they usually had. So to give a case in point, so I have about 30 elementary-age kids right now in my school-age program. Well, we know about 10 to 12 of them have some special needs that need to be addressed, and they lost their services. So think about all those kids that are on IEPs that aren't getting services right now, and it's obviously causing a lot of issues on staff. A lot of these staff, like we've mentioned before in conversations with the council, they're living in multi-generational homes, so they have people there that have pre-existing health conditions, and every single day that they're coming in, they're putting that at risk, themselves at risk. You can tell. I mean, these people are coming to take care of these children. A lot of them children of essential workers, and they need to be bigger, kinder, wiser, stronger for those kids. Well, we obviously need to have some ways to be able to compensate those teachers so that they can reduce their stress, whether it be access to mental health or just paying bills, because a lot of them, as you know, they have unexpected bills that just came that they got to figure out how to do. So our solution is, next slide, is to use the grant process for child care programs, both the family homes and center-based, to assist in helping with extra costs of providing child care and help alleviate the lower revenue due to the limited revenue. And if we could go back to, if we could go to the next slide, the next piece that I'm going to talk to, and I briefly talked about it in our previous slide, is just the lack of family support right now. I have grandparents calling me, and they're telling me, Luke, if you guys close down, I can't do it. I can't do it because a lot of them are, again, I mean, they have pre-existing health conditions, and a lot of them, they have a hard time keeping up. You think about, you have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old. It's really tough on them, and we are trained at this. This is our profession, to be able to keep these kids engaged, keep them in activities, and make sure that they have a safe and consistent environment. We're seeing extreme stress with parents. So right before we talked about rental assistance. Well, a lot of those parents are going through that, trying to figure out how they're going to pay bills, trying to figure out what's going to happen this upcoming year with the schools, and they're missing access to a lot of the services. Well, now I mean, think about how stressed you guys are. And think about all those people who have less resources. We need to be able to get some funding in place so that we are able to have some solutions. So maybe we can be able to purchase a laptop, set it up so a child can now get their services, whether it's meeting with their counselor virtually, because that's better than them not getting anything at all, right? And we're alleviating a lot of pressures on families, especially families that are suffering from lower income. Or families that are middle income that's really, you can't focus 40 hours a week at home and then be with a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old and try to intentionally make things engaging for them. So we need to be able to fund places like Parkview so that we are able to get the services to the families and work with partners like community-minded enterprises so that we can stay open safely. So I'll turn it back to you, Lee.
Okay, thank you, Luke. We could go to the next slide, please. So some of the solutions that Luke was just talking about are funding places that could have those additional services or those additional supports. And really the point there is to make the funds accessible and flexible so that programs can pay for what is important for them to pay for, whether it be to add these extra services or to access PPE or do some hazard pay for some of their teachers for the services that they're providing, and also for funding for family, friends, and neighbor caregiver support. We do have a lot of families out there that are really trying to work this out, and they lack support, they lack ideas of things to do with the children. Sometimes they're lacking in knowledge of child development and what's appropriate to ask children to do. So playgroups and virtual or in-person outdoors can be a really important asset to this. So if we could move ahead, please, to the next slide. So more solutions. Community-minded enterprises. We are the contractor for child care aware services here in Eastern Washington. We serve 11 counties here in Eastern Washington, including Spokane County and, of course, the city of Spokane. We provide coaching and training in business practices and also quality child care practices and child development practices, and we have ways to show businesses how they can increase their revenue. We also have mental health support, so licensed mental health professionals to work to support stressed out caregivers and children. You heard Luke refer to how stressed his families are, how stressed the children are, and that's really difficult on teachers. When I was a child care center director, that was the first thing that happened when behaviors would get out of control in a classroom, as I had teachers that wanted to walk off the job. Distribute grants directly to child care programs. We already have a process at Community Minded for doing online applications, scoring systems, to do cross-discipline reviewers, including child care owners, and like I said, flexible for the needs of child care program and a quick turnaround. So within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on how long, we put the ask out there. Provide pre-licensing support to those who would expand their child care slots, and also to pay for that. I saw that was included in the RFP from the city. It's really important that we look at experienced child care programs that could increase their capacity either at their site or at another site and help them to be able to do that. So let's move to the last slide. I think there's one more. So we're here as colleagues to request that the City Council approve support for child care in the city of Spokane, and with immediate funding that will make a difference in keeping children in child care and to keep child care open, because families need our help to access child care and knowing where to find and to meet their needs. And that's our presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to share these things with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Any questions from council members? Councilmember Stratton and then Councilmember Cathcart.
A quick question. I am curious about when you talk about family and friends and networks to help with child care, how do those individuals hook up to this program, or how do they know, where do they fit into this? I guess that's my question. And how do they become part of the program?
Well, they can become part of the program in that our services are community minded. What we do now, we are doing a lot of it virtually. We're putting it out on Facebook and other ways that parents can connect. They're closed groups that are specific to those children. We do activities with them and model them for them, and then also do deliver materials to them or have materials be in a central location where they can come and pick them up. And where our hope is to now move some of these things outdoors. We're doing some programs that were funded actually by United Way as part of our ECAP program to take children outdoors in parks and do some enrichment activities with them over the summer. So it would be similar to that kind of support.
And then is that available to any grandparent or aunt or uncle or family member that's providing?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Wondering if you guys happen to know what I guess on average, how many staff members from local daycares have been laid off? Like, how are our daycares operating right now in terms of staff?
Yeah, so we are lucky here in Spokane where we really do value our teachers. So anywhere that's been able to financially keep teachers employed, that's what we're doing. But there are a lot of teachers who, so for instance, at Parkview, I lost about 10 teachers in the past month and a half. And that's due to, again, some of them are older, have pre-existing health conditions, and they're like, Luke, we really can't be here. And others are seeing pressures from family or them themselves. They just have, it's just too anxiety provoking. You think about what they're exposing themselves to every single day. So that's kind of what we're seeing more of. But we're lucky to have a lot of my colleagues who really do see the value of actually serving our community.
And maybe just to follow up on that, what is it that our daycare providers are doing, do you think, that is enabling you to essentially stay open and take care of children where our public schools are questioning whether they could open? What's the difference, do you think, between the two entities?
What's the difference between K-12 system and childcare?
Yeah. In terms of why not you can be open right now?
Well, I think representation has a big part to do with that. But also because you look at our model with childcare, we're so flexible. And I mean, I'm a childcare provider. Lee Williams is with Community Minded Enterprises, and we're working together. We have, we're working with you guys, and we're just able to be more flexible to actually serve the family. So I think it's just the flexibility. We just need the funding there to be able to continue to be flexible. Just like you mentioned, we don't even know what's going to happen this upcoming fall. But I have elementary age parents calling me all the time, and now with our flexibility, we're being elementary school teachers as well. So it's just our flexibility, and we just need more funding to be able to continue to serve our community.
I would agree with Luke. I would, also add that from the very beginning, they were very supported by CDC guidelines, and we were able to get them PPE fairly quickly so that they could stay open. But it was really important that essential workers and first responders were able to go to work. And so the governor chose to keep all childcare open across the state. And they've actually done a fabulous job of keeping healthy. I think there's only been one case of COVID in a child care center during the whole time, which is absolutely phenomenal that they could be that safe. But they have a lot of safety standards in place.
And to add to that point, thank you, Lee, our regulations are a lot. And one good part about it is our sanitation practices, like Lee said. So, for instance, for Parkview, I remember last time we spoke, we closed 30 minutes early every single day just to be able to make sure we're sanitizing everything and we're back and we're a safe place. We're wearing masks. We're taking temperatures at the door and we're logging them. So like Lee is saying, we've been able to get those protective equipment, and we've been able to use it. And look, we're the cleanest place you're going to find. We take pride in that.
I think that we have the funding to be able to continue doing it. I think it's really what we're saying this evening.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I want to move on to another topic, Terry Anderson, but I did just want to say, Luke, I read your piece in the Inlander right now. I really appreciated it, so thanks for doing that as well. Terry Anderson, I think we have you back. You have to hit *3, and Hannah Lee will let you have the floor. Okay. Terry, welcome back.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm sorry about my connection and that I can't see you and you can't see me, but I'm glad to be here to talk with you about the needs of tenants in Spokane, and so I thank you for this opportunity. And I'm here because I'm asking that you use a portion of the CARES Act funds for rental assistance. And just to give you an idea, about half of all of Spokane rents their home, and the tenants in Spokane were already struggling with, a low vacancy rate, rising rents, and a lot of issues even prior to COVID. And I think that just as in many other issues that we are facing currently, the pandemic has just laid bare many of those obvious issues that we've dealt with and made them even worse. So we believe that, or we're asking that rental assistance be made available for tenants so that they can have safe and stable housing. We believe it's a public health issue as much as it is an economic impact, so that tenants can be prepared and go to work and have safe and stable housing while they're doing so. So just to give you an idea of what's happening with renters in Spokane, we operate we operate actually two in the city of Spokane, two walk-in tenants, one in Airway Heights and one in Spokane Valley. So we have 4 walk-in tenant clinics that remained, remotely open during the closure of all businesses because tenants' needs did not cease. And so we work from home and we keep our clinics open remotely. So I'm just going to give you the numbers that I have from the renewal of the most recent moratorium. So from June 2nd, our office has received 85 calls that have come through our office number, and those come through as voicemail, and when we get them, they're transferred to my email, and I'm able to reply to those almost immediately. So 85 voicemail tenant calls. Amber Abrahamson takes the majority of those calls. I forward those emails to her, and in addition to those 85 calls that she's taken, she also has taken approximately 60 calls where tenants call her directly. She's been extremely generous in allowing me to give out her cell phone number so that she can take those calls directly, and tenants call her all hours. And I receive most of my referrals directly to me through referrals, either through case managers, or I also get a lot of messages on Facebook Messenger, and I've taken approximately 50 of those calls. And this is just since June 2nd. So we have had just shy of 200 calls to our office with issues. And probably the most common things that we've been hearing during this period are violations of the moratorium, tenants who are being served notices or being threatened to be served notices, rent increases where the rent increase notices are coming in anticipation of the moratorium ending, and so landlords are anticipating that when the expiration date ends, they can raise the rent. That is prohibited. We've had lockouts where tenants landlords knew they couldn't violate the moratorium, so we've had creative issues like a lockout. I had one tenant whose storage property was seized in his storage unit because he could not move out when the landlord wanted him to move because his lease expired. We're getting a ton, probably the most, are notices of non-lease renewal, which is really scary because that means when the moratorium ends, they're month-to-month tenants and they have really no protections. We're getting tenants who are calling because they can't pay the rent. They're offered reasonable repayment plans, and that they don't believe the payment plans are reasonable, but they've signed them and then regret it and call our office. And so we are, working through some of these repayment plans that tenants are completely confused about. We've been noticing a lot of tenants that are being notified that their buildings are for sale, which is one of the exceptions to the rule, and but no written verification of the sale. And so it kind of just goes on and on with calls with tenants, mainly just in fear of losing their housing, especially during the pandemic. And lately, actually, we've been getting a lot of calls from landlords who've been calling our office to learn what is prohibited and what they can and can't do, and we're happy to help out. So we know that according to the latest census survey, 12% of all renters were unable to pay their June rent on time, and the census survey has not yet gone into July, but we expect that those numbers are going to get worse. In Spokane, we estimate there's around 41,000 renter households in Spokane. 12% of that would be around 4,100 households, and or actually more than that, about 4,300 households, and the average rent being about $1,000 a month. Even before we've offered a penny of rental assistance, we're looking at a possibility of over $5 million of rental arrears in Spokane. And if the tenants can't pay that, so even though the moratorium, as you know, has been extended to October 15th, it does not forgive rent. It does not cancel rent. So all of those months that were due are just starting to add up and pile up and starting to look really insurmountable for tenants to be able to pay their back rent and stay current. And with the spike in the COVID numbers, tenants are now facing more layoffs or having to make a very painful and difficult choice of preserving their own health. If they're health compromised or there's somebody health compromised in their household, some are choosing not to go back to work because of the rising numbers of COVID. But we also know that the people that are mostly impacted by COVID are also the same number, or the same population of tenants, of people who happen to be tenants. There is a very clear racial equity component to what's happening here, and in Spokane, 70% of all people of color rent, so the impact is far greater on people of color, communities of color. For example, the Marshallese community is about 1% of Spokane, but they're over 25% of the positive cases of COVID, and those people from the Marshallese community have been coming to tenant meetings and coming to our clinics even before COVID hit because of rising rent. The families in that community tend to double up when they become homeless, so that contributes to even more crowded housing conditions, which makes the risk even higher. We also know that we also know that people of color and young folks are people that are disproportionately impacted by the positive cases of COVID, and those are also the populations that are the highest number of renters in Spokane. Spokane County has not yet dispersed any funds for rental assistance, but they did allocate $1.3 million for a homeless shelter, which is a very ominous sign for tenants, and I'm just here to say that tenants don't want to live in a homeless shelter. Tenants want to live in their homes. And I also want to thank Steve Corker from the Inland Landlord Association for his words of encouragement, and I've been very thankful to be working with Steve Corker. I think that we both agree that rental housing is a very, very necessary part of Spokane, and we've been working together to try to get tenants to remain in their homes. But there's also another group of landlords in Spokane that actually represent thousands of tenants, and those are our nonprofit and affordable housing providers. And many of those are going with seeing unpaid rent, and they have budgets that they have to maintain. And the fear with the housing providers in the nonprofit and the affordable is that if they cannot afford to provide housing, they will convert to market rate housing, and we could lose hundreds, if not thousands, of affordable housing units in Spokane. So for all of those reasons and many, many more, and I would respectfully ask that you use the CARES Act money to help renters stay in their homes and use for rental assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry, both for your words tonight and all your work for tenants and just in the community in general. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to switch topics a bit, and I'm going to invite... I'm sorry.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, please. I was jumping right ahead. Go ahead. Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, Terry, my understanding is the county is looking at if they haven't already implemented a rental program, so hopefully that'll be coming. But my question for you is...
Oh, that's awesome.
My question for you is, can you reach out to my office when you can and just let us know of any landlords that are proposing to raise rents during COVID? I've been trying to reach out and have personal conversations with those folks as I learn about it and just try to understand what's going on. So if you know of any and can just reach out to our office when you have a chance to let us know who those are, we'd love to reach out to those people.
Thank you. I will do that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Terry? Comments? Yeah, we did just, to Michael's point, we just learned that the Department of Commerce is giving $6 million to Spokane County just for rental assistance. So that's state money, not CARES money that they have. We don't know the details yet of what the plan is. I'm sure if it's coming from Commerce, it'll have some parameters around it. But that's really good news for us, and we hope to learn more about that before we're at a decision point on this. So now let me switch to Mariah McKay. And Mariah, if you would like to introduce yourself, and I think if you have another speaker with you, feel free to just incorporate them in. Thanks.
I do. Thank you, Councilmember Briggs. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I can hear myself echoing. I don't know if I should try to hit the share content button.
Yeah, go ahead. Try that.
Makes my computer try to run really slow. Sorry about that.
And Mariah, if you just turn your volume down on your computer, then you don't get that reverb.
Is that better? Excellent. The share content button is non-responsive, so I'm going to ask Annalee to please screen share our presentation.
Yep.
And I'll be presenting tonight with Megan Kennedy with the North Monroe Business District. So I'll go ahead and start while Hannah gets up our content. So most people, there we go. Thank you so much. Are familiar with me, but for those who are not, my name is Mariah McKay, and I'm the director of the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. And I was originally planning to keep it really short, but to follow in the vein of other presenters, by way of explanation, SIMBA is a triple bottom line, green and socially responsible business alliance. We have over 100 members throughout the Inland Northwest, and we collaborate regularly with neighborhood business district organizations, demographic chambers, and more traditional chambers of commerce. And Megan Kennedy's joining with me, so I hope she'll be ready and on deck to unmute. And we are presenting on behalf of a growing community-based coalition, actually, of these different partners that has been rapidly laying the groundwork for a pretty wide-reaching and impactful business assistance campaign to mitigate the many different impacts of the pandemic that we've been seeing in our local business communities. So SIMBA, North Monroe, INBA, the Inland Northwest Business Alliance, our regional LGBTQ chamber, and the Garland District are founding partners, and we are all reaching out to others to develop and launch this COVID-19 economic response campaign that's designed by and for local small businesses to help independent enterprises survive this economic crisis and help to keep our community resilient after the CARES Act money disappears. So this initiative supports our economic vitality and community health in two different ways. First, by supporting small businesses and adapting to changing consumer needs that are being driven by the pandemic, and also by educating and incentivizing more consumers to invest in local businesses on an ongoing basis. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. So giving a brief landscape analysis, there are nearly 11,000 local businesses currently in Spokane, and most of the businesses involved in our coalition are not connected to other larger business-serving associations, yet we are filling a critical gap in the current economic recovery and response landscape. You've probably heard in the media that economists are predicting a precipitous collapse in the number of independently owned businesses in our economy if no major intervention is implemented. This has not happened before in this way, and if it comes to pass, it is going to be catastrophic beyond description, and I'm not actually going to take time here to enumerate the many ways in which this many local businesses closing simultaneously over a short period of time, how it will impact us not just now, but for years and generations to come. So we all know that aid is limited in supply and is really dwarfed by the need. You can see, there's only a few hundred of our 11,000 small businesses that received this state Department of Commerce money. And with the $10 million that GSI started distributing as of today, only about 1,000 entities will be able to take advantage of those funds. So that leaves thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses floating without any support who have been impacted. So another thing to note is that the impacts of this pandemic are not being felt equally between business owners of different demographic groups. And that's a whole, I know the city has passed equity resolutions, and our campaign hopes to respond to that kind of criteria for distributing aid and support. Many national aid programs have been set up inadvertently to benefit businesses that have specialized government relations or finance staff, which is not most small businesses. And this unfortunately results in resources too often not reaching those who need them most. So this campaign on behalf of the city government will kind of be that last mile of delivery in the aid landscape, if you will. Additionally, many businesses operating in this challenging environment are stretched thin by staff reductions, some of the other challenges mentioned, staff with insecure housing and childcare. And lastly, our region has never deployed a comprehensive buy local campaign before. Seattle did a campaign called Think Local a decade ago. Missoula has a buy local campaign. Bozeman has a buy local campaign. Every major city around us has significant investments in their buy local messaging and local culture. And so that's a silver lining, is that Spokane really stands to gain from approaching this effort in an organized way. And so with that, I would like to hand it over to Megan to talk about business needs.
Thank you all for hearing us tonight, and it's amazing to be amongst such incredible company looking out for so many very pressing needs around our community. If any of you know independent local business owners, you know that they tend to be quite capable and adaptive individuals, just so much as they are also very frustrated and fatigued at the moment as they work to protect their businesses that they've built over decades or years, as well as protect the jobs that they've created. And one of the things that I keep hearing from my neighbors on North Monroe is that there's a sense that people are still spending money. They're just spending it mostly online and mostly not locally. Again, we have to remember that nearly 60% of our local independently owned businesses here do not have their own dedicated website for their services. And for some business models, it's a real conundrum on how to even make that move online. So when we talk about what do these small, independent, local businesses need, I think it would help me if we went to the next slide, but I'm going to do my best. We need to remember that these businesses that are healthy, they have a customer base. What they need is support in restoring that lost access to their customers due to the operational constraints of this pandemic. There's a huge amount of challenges and many overflowing inboxes being burdened by our small business shoulders right now, and trusted partnership in navigating those challenges, whether it be compliance or just navigating the aid landscape. Business owners are not accustomed to asking for help generally. So kind of cutting through the noise and making clear steps to help is incredibly important. And with partners that you trust, such as SIMBA or area neighborhood business districts. We need to see direct and custom implementation of business services, assistance to pivot online, and other ways in which the fundamental business plans of these businesses have been impacted. And last but not least, I keep hearing again and again this idea that relief funds, emergency survival funds are, of course, critical, but investing in these foundational systems that result in a strong local economy where independent business can have a leg up the next time we're hit by some unforeseen circumstance is incredibly important. There is a feeling that, hey, we know we're the underdogs here, but can we help us out a little bit? So the needs are great. Businesses are as unique as the people who run them. But I hope that paints a picture a bit of what at least I'm hearing in my neighborhood business district. I'm going to pass it back to Mariah on the next slide.
Thank you. I think I've been successfully unmuted. Appreciate that testimony, Megan. So part of the platform of connecting customers back to their favorite local businesses that Megan was alluding to, there's many systems that can accomplish this, and we're most interested in rapidly deploying a local digital currency program through an already developed and proven software that will benefit local businesses by increasing the spending power of their existing customers and offering rewards and incentives to new customers, saving businesses money on their monthly card and transaction fees, which for many small businesses is anywhere from $400 to $600 a month, especially for the ice cream shops and coffee shops that have small dollar amounts that with high frequency. And another benefit of these kind of technologies is that they'll actually make it easier for businesses to go in on collaborative marketing deals with each other and promotional offers, as well as automatically measuring the amount of money that flows through the system and is generated by the system. So that's a really exciting way to be able to report back to the public. This program we launched had how many millions of dollars go through it over the pilot period. So we have a plan to make it easy for even the smallest of businesses to participate in the Live Local campaign by subsidizing their startup costs and fees through the launch period. Beyond the collective community marketing boost we'll offer, we'll also be providing customized business consulting services at no cost that aren't already available elsewhere in our market. So while this campaign can be launched before the end of the year, its revenue model allows it to be self-sustaining beyond the COVID-19 CARES Act funds, which would provide permanent benefits to our community. And so with that, we'll go to the last slide for impact. So the answer to the question, do independent buy local campaigns make a difference, is a resounding yes. Buy local campaigns like Live Local are proven to boost local sales at independent businesses, where the local circulation effect has a better positive impact on our community. So according to the American Independent Business Alliance, an average of 48% of each purchase at a local business gets recirculated in our community, compared to less than 14% at chain stores and even less for online giants. Buy local initiatives shift spending to local entrepreneurs who need it the most by an average increase of 4% in sales, which you can see in this graph here. This helps preserve local ownership in our region, generates a significant amount of local sales tax revenue, and can support our ongoing recovery and response efforts. So with that, we want to seek a partnership with the city to help launch Live Local, to make targeted investments in local businesses, to leverage their ingenuity to help rebuild our community in the wake of this dual public health and economic disaster. And we tried to keep our presentation short and are happy to take questions.
All right. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them. I'll see Councilmember Mumm first.
Hi. Is there any reason why you chose Live Local or Live Local instead of Buy Local?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We wanted to create something deeper than a consumer spending campaign. We want it to be a lifestyle campaign because we want to be really inclusive of cultural makers, and this is kind of foreshadowing Melissa's presentation a little bit. We really want people to love the place they live in, and to do that, they have to know who owns what and what the history of these businesses are. So we wanted a campaign that resonates with people's desire to live in a healthy, resilient community and not just getting 20% off or a more shallow transactional nature to the brand. Does that answer your question, Councilmember?
Yeah, just that Buy Local was so successful. Just curious why you were switching. Thanks.
Councilmember Stratton.
Thank you. So talk to me a little bit about what the criteria is for a small business joining SIMBA.
So we have a pretty broad criteria. There's no size restriction. We focus on the Upper Columbia River Gorge watershed geography, which is coterminous with the Inland Northwest. So while you can be a local business within a couple 100 miles radius of Spokane, most of our consumer-facing education and organizing efforts focus on the metro area. And we also allow locally owned franchises to be a part of our organization.
Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, so you said you were going to subsidize startup costs at the start, so presumably they'll be paying something to continue on your app. So who makes the revenue once you get past this initial startup period?
Yeah. So we've done a landscape analysis of 18 different buy local loyalty softwares across the country, and SIMBA will actually be publishing a report on some of those systems in another week or two that I'm happy to share with council members. And we are doing a deep dive on the top 3 systems that we think have the most promise and benefit to small businesses. And the Live Local Frequency software is the one that has the most economic impact and automatic tracking capabilities. And that was developed by a company called Protegra. And after we proposed to subsidize the subscription fee for small businesses for the first 18 months of the program, the subscription fee is $25 a month. So it's pretty low barrier. And we're actually hoping to negotiate a bulk rate for a lower monthly fee, since we're able to prospectively implement at a pretty broad scale upfront.
And that fee goes directly to the app manufacturer, or does it go back to your organization?
The fee goes to pay for the software, and there's a couple of different ways the software can be integrated with local financial partners. And so we're in the process of doing more feasibility research to explore the best option for how to deliver the system. So I encourage you to check out the Local Frequency website. It's been successful in a couple of different cities, and it really helps businesses collaborate and refer their best customers to each other, which creates that multiplier effect. in a way that right now a lot of businesses feel really isolated. They might only have a couple thousand people on their mailing list, and everyone who was going to buy a coronavirus gift card already did so, and they're still not making ends meet. And a program like this would give them a much bigger pool of customers to reach out to and make it buy with. So it's a pretty powerful program.
Councilmember Wilkerson.
So, Mariah, what is the startup cost, or where are you looking to get the startup funds for this?
I can't hear her.
You got to in your microphone.
I got too many microphones. So, Mariah, where are the startup funds coming for this particular program you are describing to us? Or what's your request for startup funds?
We are in the process of developing the campaign budget. I'm going to turn down my volume now that I can hear you. And we're hoping to design a comprehensive campaign, including the business consulting services and system launch and participation grants for around the $500,000 mark from the CARES Act funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mariah? Okay, Mariah, thank you so much. And I forgot the name of your partner, Ms. Kennedy, tonight on the show. But thank you, Megan, as well, for joining us and sharing your business owner grit from North Monroe. Okay, let's go to Melissa Huggins.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Is the audio okay there?
It's a little echoey.
Ooh, I don't know why.
You turn down your volume, maybe.
Mm-hmm. How's that?
That's still
echoey?
Yep, but we can hear
Yeah,
you.
it is. Okay. Give me 2 seconds here. Hannah-Lee, do you mind making me a presenter so I can share my screen?
She does not mind, and she's working on it, but she's not near a microphone.
Did that work?
How's the audio now?
It's an improvement.
Still echoey.
It's still echoey, but...
I'm so sorry, team. I don't... Terrible. Okay, I'm going to pull this up here.
Melissa, I can send you the phone call-in info, and we can go to the next person and then come back to you if that might be better.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, then, while we're getting Melissa squared away, I'd like to invite Julie Honenkamp and Carol Welts.
Great. We're also going to need... Oh, my, here we go. My volume's all the way down. Is it echoey as well?
A little bit, but
that seems better.
We can hear you.
And Hannah-Lee, we also need your help putting our presentation up if that's at all possible. You have heard a great deal this evening from folks talking about rental needs, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing this. I'll just share with you, many of you know SNAP. We've been around now 54 years, served just shy of 45,000 individuals last year. And really tonight what we want to share with you when Hannah-Lee gets it up is kind of the raw data from the folks that answer our phones through the period of March 16th through June 30th. So during that period of time, we took over 13,000 inquiries around needs. And the top needs that were identified were 6,800 of those were energy and utility related. 4,300 were housing and homeless, rental and mortgage assistance related. Thanks, Hannah. If you could just drop down to the third, I'm already on a roll here. Thank you. 4,300, I said housing, homeless, rental assistance, mortgage assistance related. 525 calls for food, 484 calls for small business and financial education. And then additionally, we're getting calls for transportation, home repair, weatherization, technology, people asking for helps with cell phone bills and car payments, which I had not really thought a lot about, but sure enough, we're getting those calls as well. So you can see even in just 6 to 7 weeks, actually that's about 15 weeks, my apologies, quite a few calls there, about 1,000 a week coming in for some pretty high need folks. So on the next slide, and I suspect you may have already seen this, if you haven't been to the 211 Counts website yet, you really should take a peek. Again, this is Spokane County data, and they break down the 1,100 housing calls they've had March 1 to June 30. Folks calling for low-cost housing, folks calling for rent assistance, and then shelter housing as well. But it can really be drilled down, and so I have that website up there for you as well. We have burned through effectively our rental assistance dollars already. So we're kind of Carol can talk a little bit about this, but we're kind of in a pause mode right now. And we've done some rough calculations to figure out how much it would take to serve folks. And an effective, I think it's about, depending on how fast you can contract, I think a provider will have roughly 6 weeks to push money out the door. And that's in order to get you your billings by October 31st. So, depending on when contracts come, we would have to stop a week or two in advance as well because we wait for clients to get us paperwork back. So it's a pretty narrow, compressed time. And, we can do 50 households a week right now. Maybe it can go a little higher. So that'd be 300 some households, maybe 350 households in that 6-week period. And that translates into roughly $1.2 million for 300 households, depending on all the assumptions that are made based on your program design. So I think the need is huge. I worry a little bit about kind of, Steve brought it up earlier, different program designs being offered across the region and how that will work and whether maybe the city's already thought about this, whether folks could avail themselves of multiple sources for rental assistance and how coordination might happen. So, Carol, I don't know, do you want to jump in a little bit? Just quickly, 3 minutes is probably pretty close to being up already, but.
Yeah. Well, I too, thanks for letting us come tonight. And I appreciate Steve Corker's comments, especially about the owner having to live in the city and the RFP and only 2 months to have for repayment plan. So I think both of those are pretty challenging.
Carol, I just wanted to interrupt just briefly. You can go more than the 3 minutes. We've been letting people more.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I'm a fast talker.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And the other thing is on the RFP is for the mortgage servicers, it said it had to be paid directly to the servicer. And that's a problem because it takes so much to get through there. I don't know that 6-week window would be workable. So that one maybe is paid directly to a homeowner. But, for a healthy community, it's a housed community. And it's cheaper to keep people housed than it is to rehouse them, So whatever we can do to stabilize our community in this way, people will get back to work. Things will go back to normal if they have a place to live, right? And so the best thing that we can do for our community is to keep them housed right now. So thanks for taking time for us today.
Okay, any questions for the folks from SNAP? All right, the money that you said you were out, Julie, I was just going to ask, that's the $500,000 that we already allocated from the city? No.
No, that was, the money we had was from LIHEAP, and we've, for rental assistance this year, it's been $466,000.
Okay. Councilmember Stratton.
Julie, I just want to confirm, you said it would, to serve 300 households is approximately 1.2 million?
1.2, yep.
Okay, thanks.
That's our back of the cocktail. Don't hold us to it, but that's probably pretty close.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think I'll go to Fawn Shot and then come back to you, Melissa, if that works. So Fawn, welcome to our meeting.
Hi there, everybody. Let me work on my volume. Is that better?
Yes.
Great. As you know, Voice America, it serves women at Hope House Women Shelter, as well as Crosswalk Teen Shelter, and then 185 apartments for adults who are chronically homeless, and another 65 units for young people who are exiting homelessness. So I'm just going to share with you how critical it is for healthy shelters because of this COVID crisis, especially during this time, for people to be able to move out of street homelessness and address housing. It's a foundation for every person in our community to be COVID safe. So at this point in time, shelter providers have been struggling with a gap in their funding to just maintain their basic services. And I'm just going to use some examples of our services at Volunteers of America, and these exclude other shelter programs. As a provider, we are running up $30,000 to $40,000 a month in just additional agency costs in PPE and additional cleaning costs for our shelter, and also the fact that we lost all of our volunteers that prepared food services and then also bought food for the agencies. So that's a huge loss. What we're seeing is a really high increase in domestic violence and abuse and our shelters are being the fallback for stressed homes that are experiencing job loss and really tight living quarters now that individuals might be home more often due to that job loss. So for the first time, we're seeing brand new faces at Crosswalk. We saw 4 brand new faces this weekend that we've never seen before from our Crosswalk Teen Shelter. And that's a really repetitive story that we're hearing over and over. Our Hope House Women's Shelter is the overflow for the YWCA, and we are seeing domestic violence through the roof from our own community and our surrounding communities. We can't keep up with the need for our domestic violence services right now. So I think as a community, what we really need to ask ourselves is, where do we want our homeless to be during this COVID pandemic, right? Do we want them in the parks? Do we want them in the river? Do we want them in our neighborhoods? Or do we want them in our business doorways? Because if we don't address shelter systems and the lack of funding for our shelter systems that can actually move somebody to stable housing, that's really the only option we give people as a way out. So I think something to consider, I think the ability for shelter systems to be really nimble right now is occurring. For example, Hope House, in order to not drop our capacity to 13 women because of social distancing, we've moved twice in the last 10 weeks. We went to the downtown library and then again to the county building. We hope to be able to stay there till our opening of the new building in April, but if that doesn't happen, we have to go to our old building and drop down to 13 women served every single night. We're still turning away 10 to 15 women every single night, even at that increased capacity of serving 60 women a night. So you can see the need is great, and it's not declining. I think one thing that I'd just like to make really clear in the services that all of the nonprofits that do housing, we're housing right now the chronically homeless individuals that are experienced homelessness in the 2008 recession. Those are the individuals right now we're serving every single day in our permanent supported housing. They lost their job, they lost their ability to have housing. They've had evictions now on their records, so they're hard to rent to. So they now find themselves in a very high cost program such as permanent supported housing. So what we would really like to be able to see, is knowing that we're going to hit another economic crisis, is to limit the number of individuals that experience homelessness and hit our shelter system. So we need the rental assistance. We need the economy to be strong for our small businesses so those individuals can work in our small businesses and our local restaurants. All of those things need to happen so we don't have, we're broken at capacity now, and we cannot handle a homeless system and as a city and a county another influx of homeless individuals. We will certainly stagger as a community if we don't address those needs. So in short, I would just like to say I recommend filling the gap of what service providers have already spent on COVID that hasn't been reimbursed with these COVID dollars. Make us whole, at least from that portion, so that we can extend our services longer during this economic crisis that we know that we're going to face. And as we see new individuals experiencing homelessness, that we have a shelter bed that can divert them quickly into a permanent housing setting. So what I ask is that you consider helping us close that gap. We will then, as nonprofit providers, extend our funds longer that we have with our city funds and our county funds. Also, it helps us to not eat up all of our donor funds that are getting tighter and tighter every day due to the lack of ability to have events. It's cut down our fundraising by 50%. We have had 3 events in COVID, and all 3 have been below 50% at this point in time. So we want to extend our private donation funding to keep our shelter operations whole and to support the match that the city gives. But if we could leverage some of the COVID response dollars to do that, it would help those dollars last longer.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yep. Councilmember Cathcart.
Yeah, just wondering how much is that gap? What's the amount that you think is necessary?
Right now, we're burning about $50,000 a month. I'm sorry, I had to turn it up to hear you. We're burning about $50,000 a month across our entire agencies. Our shelters operations between shelter operations is hitting right at about $25,000 to $30,000.
And so 30,000 times 6 months, that's how much you guys are asking, or is that what your current operation expense is?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to manage my volume to hear you and also not echo. That would be to just fill the gap of what we've expended in COVID alone.
Okay.
To keep us whole, Hope House alone is only funded 24% of our operating budget of $600,000. So between the county and the city, Hope House is only funded of 24% of that. So we're one of the shelter operations that is funded the lowest. I do believe that there's other shelters that are not wholly funded as well. It might make sense with these COVID funds and an opportunity to level the playing field across our shelter systems and determine what does it cost to shelter a human being for a night. And if that number is $50, we fund every shelter system a per diem cost of what that bed night would be.
Any other questions for Sean? I mean, for Fawn, not Sean. All right. Thank you, Fawn, for being here and sharing that perspective. And now we're going to try Melissa Huggins again. And then after Melissa will be Tim Hinkle. So Melissa's muted. Is that our mute or her mute? Okay. Looks like you can talk now, Melissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know what the challenge is today, but I appreciate everyone's patience. And Haley, thank you so much for your help, as always. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. My name is Melissa Huggins. I am the Executive Director of Spokane Arts, and I am here tonight speaking as a representative of the cultural sector as a whole. So I will, let's see here, take you through some slides. Okay, so a couple of things. Hoping to take you through the impact of the arts on our local economy, talk about some of the lack of opportunities for other funding, and then talk about some existing needs. So firstly, as I mentioned, I'm here as a representative of the creative sector, and to say that arts mean business. Arts are business. Arts are local businesses. So arts and culture are crucial to the local economy. They draw tourists, they generate tax and parking revenue, and they positively impact nearby restaurants, bars, and retail shops. Just to remind everyone, as of 2018, there were over 11,000 creative wage-based jobs in the city of Spokane, which is 11% of the overall workforce, and that does not include freelance or self-employed creatives. And Americans for the Arts just did a study of individual artists, and according to that survey, 62% of creative workers are currently out of work due to COVID. So just as a reminder of that economic impact piece, for every $1 spent on admission to an arts and culture event, $32 is invested in the local economy, because when people go to a concert or a play, they also go out to eat, and they pay for parking, and they pay for childcare, and they buy a T-shirt or a book. And so there's this massive spillover effect that arts and culture as a sector have on other industries. And, that is going to be crucial to Spokane's economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. So Council is well aware of our history with the Saga Grants Program. To date, we've awarded $389,000 in grants to organizations, businesses, and individuals. That represents 91 grantees across arts disciplines and across the city. And a couple of things to keep in mind about those grants that have been awarded so far. The Saga grant itself is really a catalyst. So an average of 11 times the grant amount is actually spent in the community to support each program or project. So the Saga grant is really just the beginning, and then it generates all of this other economic activity for each grant. And the other reminder is that the Saga Grant Program is funded by a small percentage of the admissions tax. And that tax is collected at concerts and movie theaters and other entertainment, and all of those are shut down for the majority of this year, which means there's no tax being collected, which means less grant funding for Saga in the future. And as you know, Saga is the only grant-making program in the region that's solely focused on arts and culture. So these nonprofit organizations, these creative businesses, these individual artists, they don't have many other options or places to turn. In terms of the needs, 42% of local arts nonprofits and creative businesses surveyed have less than 3 months cash on hand. As I've articulated at previous meetings, the various forms of state and federal relief that have been provided to date have either not been intended for the arts and culture sector or have not reached the arts and culture sector. And so in contrast to many of the other needs, there's been so much great work done around basic needs, lots of local groups and individuals and government working together to help support basic needs, but the arts sector has not received emergency relief. Of course, as you know, performing arts venues cannot hold events until phase 3 or 4. Most of them will be completely unable to host events in 2020. And as you know, there's no curbside service or online sales for the performing arts. Being unable to hold their events means not only losing out on the ability to sell tickets, but it also means lost fundraisers. And so we need to be able to make sure these organizations can survive these shutdowns and still be around next year. And another thing to keep in mind is that when these organizations, when these venues are able to reopen, which, at this point in 2020, they're facing at least 9 months of closures. They could be facing 3 to 6 months more of closures at the beginning of 2021. But when they reopen, the reopening guidelines mean that they will have a very low capacity, most likely 25%, and they'll have to make a significant investment in equipment, training, and more to prepare to even host audiences and events. And again, they don't have the ability to raise funding for that. They don't have the ability to host events, to pay for those expenses. And in speaking with our colleagues on the west side, I'll just give one quick example. The Woodland Park Zoo, incredibly popular organization, one of our science and museums. And they are only able to operate at 25% capacity, but they're not even hitting that 25% capacity mark because people are afraid, understandably, of the pandemic. And initially, in order to open, they had to make a massive investment in purchasing equipment and training and doing so much to even figure out how to have people in their space, that they're very concerned that if they get shut down again, or depending on how long the shutdowns last, they won't be able to come back. And so that's a parallel to the situation that our performing arts venues and other organizations are facing. So in terms of the opportunity, how do we address this? Just a couple of ideas. Again, in line with the model of SAGO, we want to ensure that large cultural organizations survive the pandemic. And the way to do that right now with CARES Act relief dollars is to give grants to these large organizations to make sure that they are still around next year to generate that sales tax revenue, to generate those parking revenues, to draw tourists, and all of those things. Another aspect of what we would recommend in terms of use for CARES Act dollars would be putting creatives to work. We'd love to see a portion of funding used to create and implement small neighborhood-based creative projects, things that can be done, in this current environment. Some small public art projects. Again, lots of options there. As you know, creatives across the city have been getting very creative and innovative with how they're responding to the COVID crisis. And then emergency relief grants to individual working artists to replace lost wages and earning from canceled events due to COVID. And as you know, we were able to privately fundraise to do a round of small grants before, and those were much needed, but those were really a bridge. We had hoped that those would be a bridge until additional funding arrived. And we are, 4 months into this crisis, and no individual person, no individual worker can survive on one $500 grant when all of your opportunities to work are shut down indefinitely. So those are a few of the things that we would recommend. And I'll just say one last thing, which is, listening to the other speakers, and this goes along with Fawn's comments, is, how much putting creatives back to work intersects with all of the other issues that we've talked about tonight. The majority of local creatives are renters. Many local artists have disabilities or health issues. They're cancer survivors. They're living with MS. They're parents who are struggling to parent and stay afloat and scrabble together enough work. Many of them are self-employed or small business owners, and they are struggling to pay their rent and their health care, and they want to work, but the pandemic is preventing them from doing this work that they've trained their whole lives to do. So not only does investing in arts and culture have economic benefits, on the fun side, it also helps prevent, many of these individual workers who are living on the edge from being forced into the kind of more desperate situations that have been described tonight. So with that, I am grateful for your time and happy to field questions.
Any questions for Melissa? I can't see everybody, so if you have one, just go ahead and volunteer. Okay, I'm not hearing. Thank you, Melissa, for that. And then that brings us...
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that brings us to our last speaker for tonight on this issue, and that's Tim Henkel from United Way. And Tim, I'm hoping you'll introduce yourself and give us your thoughts.
Okay, can you hear me? And this is
Yep.
Hang on.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. My name's Tim Hinkle, and I'm the President and CEO of Spokane County in Idaho, and thank you for hosting this evening and inviting so many great organizations to share some ideas with you. I think the thing I would just lift up for you is that I actually completely recognize the challenge that you have, sincerely, in trying to look at where can we best utilize these resources. It is something that our organization faces on a daily basis, as I know do you. The one thing I guess I would lift up for you, and I will preface any of my comments, is that I'm not going to make a suggestion in terms of how it should happen, but just some observations for you on which I think, first of all, to validate everything that's been said tonight. Not that you don't believe what's there, but I can tell you over and over again that the statistics are there, the creativity of the staff of all of these organizations to respond to the work that they need to do to help this community address daily problems that candidly have been laid bare by the COVID crisis. These issues all existed before, and they now are much more apparent to all of us as a result of this. The inequities that existed prior to this COVID crisis were there. The marginalized communities that were being left aside or left behind were there before. So what is it that we're doing today to begin to create a direction to find our way out of this? And that's really the challenge that I see with all of this. And one of the candidly, the sole solution I can lift up for you is in our work with the Onovia Foundation, Empire Health Foundation, Avista Foundation, the Palmer Group, the Gates Foundation, a number of others that came to this community or lived in this community and said, what is it that the philanthropic community can do to respond to the crisis? And we came together and created some pretty creative and unique ways to collaborate and connect. I've heard it throughout the presentations tonight, from the tenants union to the Spokane landlords to the Hope House and to SNAP and all of the other ways in which we are connected to one another. If there's something that you can do with this resource to help leverage, connect, create opportunities for collaborations and alignment of other investments from the county, from the other municipalities, again, we have as a community to say, let's change the way we've done things before and use this resource to begin that journey as a way in which we can begin to create ways to address the various challenges that we've faced here in this community for a long, long time. The creativity of the not-for-profit sector has been fabulous. We have had regular weekly, bi-weekly meetings with a number of the partners that we fund, and you'd be amazed the ways in which they have continued to provide service and at the same time face the same safety challenges, the same kind of issues that are grocery stores to the other small businesses, to the police, to city council members, to all the others. Our interactions out in the community have been exacerbated by this crisis. And so what ways in which can you, with us and with other partners in this community, utilize, leverage, align these resources to create, one, the immediate response, and then lay the groundwork for how do we do things differently going forward. So thanks for the time here this evening and for your thoughtful reflections around all of this and ways in which all of us are happy to work with you to get our way through this and then find a better system, better circumstance on the other side of it.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. Any questions for Tim at this point? Councilmember Wilkerson.
First of all, I want to thank you, Tim, for your comments, and I want to really acknowledge the foundations and the philanthropic folks who came together at the beginning of this. You guys were on the front of it. You were rapid response. You were targeted in your investments in the community. You targeted non-traditional groups, small, whether they were had their 501c3 or they were the church in the neighborhood passing out food. So I just want to acknowledge your contributions because really that has filled a gap that this COVID money and other monies would not have qualified for, and the people that were served are better off for it. So I applaud all of you for that effort, and I know that it is ongoing. Even as we speak. I think we've been through 2 rounds of grants and possibly working on the 3rd. So kudos to that group.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember.
Councilmember Kinnear.
Hi, Tim. Thanks so much. You make perfect sense. And let's to chat longer with you about this because I could pick your brain a little bit more with more detail and how we can make an impact, not just put a Band-Aid on what's wrong, but actually move forward with some really concrete steps so that we're not repeating our past. So love to have more in-depth, and I know this is a very compact presentation that you gave, more of a thoughtful analysis. And I'd love to have a more in-depth conversation so that we can really get to the details about some of the things that you're thinking about.
Happy to do so, Councilmember.
Any other questions or comments for Tim? All right. So anyway, that brings us to the end of our speakers. Staff and I just wanted you to kind of get your juices flowing in your brain and thinking about it. We're on a really fast track. There's RFPs are out there now that the administration and council staff put together, and I think they're due Sunday. And then we have a rapid response RFP review committee going, and then we hope to be a week from Thursday in study session coming up with a resolution to do some allocations. Preliminary ones that would then get written up in contracts by Sally Stouffer. So be thinking of that, and we'll get you more information as to what proposals come in, so you can give some feedback to the committee if you want to dig into those. But that is the end that I have for tonight, unless anyone else wants to make any comments about this or anything else. So I'll create that space. Then the last thing that I wanted to say is Councilmember Wilkerson also wrote a column in the Inlander this week, and I found it very powerful as well, and I commend it to all of you. And I've been using your analogy of carrying around those bricks and lots of conversations about equity that I've been having with the county. So thanks for that insight, Councilmember. With that, we're adjourned.